And Namaste Utsoda. I hope you can hear me.
Namaste Ajay bhai and
Namaste Utsoda. Namaste to Maya Durga.
Maya Durga. Namaskar. Maya Durga is having a good
Maya Durga
day.
is all set and ready to go. Utsoda, this is Hindu Lounge episode number
49.
49. Episode number 49. We are quickly coming to our 50th show, and at the end of this today's show, I have a special announcement for the 50th anniversary show. So, Utsoda, with that, I want to welcome you, and I want to welcome all our viewers. And this is for those who are joining us for the first time. This is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Initiative of World Hindu Council of America, VHPA. With me, as always, Utsav Chakrabarti. Utsoda is the Executive Director of Hindu Pact, and I am Ajay Shah. I am the President of World Hindu Council of America, or VHPA. And we come live every week at 11 o'clock Eastern. And we are live on YouTube, we are live on Facebook, and we are live on Twitter, on all our social media channels. So that today's episode is something that we have periodically talked about in the show, but this week it seemed like from every direction this issue was taking a center stage in California in California. So today's show is about the caste resolutions in the United States, and just a little bit of background, Utsoda. This the Santa Clara city council is a county, and a Human Rights Commission of Santa Clara has appointed a subcommittee that was going to discuss caste as a protected class. Okay, and that was the resolution. Um, I'm going to share this resolution, but before I do that, and before I forget, I just want to remind all our viewers that this is a dial-in show. Please do call in. The numbers that you can use to call in, I'm going to post them on the chat as well. But here are the numbers to call in and participate in this show. We welcome your participation in the show. So here is the Human Rights Commission's November 12th, 2020 regular meeting. And you can see that in this regular meeting, uh, Tanimori Soundararajan from Equality Labs provided information related to historical background of caste system hierarchy, and the caste system in modern world. She provided for the information relating to widespread caste discrimination in South Asia and in United States. And we'll go over what is this based on. But continuing on this, Ms. Soundarajan recounted acts of caste discrimination in workplace, educational institute, and everyday life. And then it led to this, in a 14-0 vote, it led to the appointment of this particular commission to look into caste in South Asia. So with that, I will turn it over to you to tell us about a little bit about what is caste. So let's start with that. And we have done a whole show on what is caste, but I want to turn it over to you to describe to our viewers what caste is and what is the historic background of caste, and then from that we'll go and dissect the actual resolution. Okay, so that over to you. Please go ahead and give your introductory remarks, general welcome, and then talk about what caste is. Utsada, you might be on mute.
Thank you, Ajay bhai. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Perfect. So I think we have discussed this topic before, but before I jump into the topic of today, and this is something that we have been dealing with for a while. This is our 49th show, and I really want to thank my wife, Liliana, for being just the most amazing supportive person on this effort. Because over the last year, throughout the COVID crisis, every Sunday we would sit and do this. And before that, on Saturdays and Fridays and throughout the week, sometimes more than once, we would spend hours putting together these comments, these analyses, the topics itself. And throughout this, with a small little kid that we have, Liliana has been very supportive. In fact, every time we make this show, she takes the time out and brings my daughter with her to sit with me. So I just wanted to thank her on this 49th show for being an amazing partner in this effort, without which I could not have done this. And this is not an Oscar award ceremony thanking.
No, thank you. I think I want to echo that, and I want to say that this goes the same with my wife as well. I think I was saving it for the 50th show, but you kind of
I had to say it today. I had to say it today because
right.
I will say it again on the 50th show, by the way.
Right.
Coming into our topic on a more serious note and a more somber note, well, I just want to talk about how these things are happening. So there's a pattern here, and people can generate their own analyses based on that pattern. The pattern that is coming out of these quote unquote caste resolutions that are coming up in different cities has a trend. It comes from an individual named Soundarajan Tenmori, who is supposedly leading a group called Equality Labs, very nicely named. And we have talked about Equality Labs before. But behind this front person named Tenmori Soundarajan, there are other individuals who people need to look into. And in this history of Equality Labs, they have been partnering with really, really wonderful organizations. And I say wonderful with a lot of sarcasm. They have been partnering with Kashmiri separatists and Islamists. They've been partnering with terrorists from Khalistan movement who have wreaked havoc in the Indian subcontinent about 20 years ago. They have been partnering with individuals and organizations that are known to spread stark Hindu-phobia in the United States. And this organization has somebody named Sharmin Hussain as a leading strategist and communicator within this organization. So keep that in mind. And another thing to be kept in mind is that these resolutions usually come up in places where there is somebody from the Pakistani American community involved in the cities, in the counties. For example, in the case of this particular one in Santa Clara, there is a person named Shahnawaz Saigal, who is a commissioner, who actually is the one moving this resolution. So I'll just let people gauge this pattern and try to understand what is driving this effort to create fault lines around the Hindu community, within the Hindu community in America. Because the more fault lines that can be created within the Hindu community, the more they can be divided in America, the more they can be targeted. And that's where I think this whole narrative of quote unquote caste is being brought in.
Why don't we start with explaining, and we have done this as a whole show,
Hmm.
but many people may not have joined previously because it was one of our very early shows. So why don't we start with what is caste, and and then we'll go into the relevance of caste in America. We'll go over this survey that Equality Lab did, which is really not a scientific survey, but it's basis of all the resolutions. But we'll cover that. But first, let's start with what is caste, Sada? I
Correct.
Because really, caste, the word caste, does not appear in any of the Hindu scriptures. Correct?
Absolutely. So in fact, the word caste first appears in Europe to describe lineage, race, or breed. And it comes from the word casta, which is a Portuguese origin word. So think about it. The entire cause that is being espoused here, and the Indian American, the community, and the Hindu community is being targeted with, the entire word that is being used to describe this cause actually doesn't even originate from the Indian subcontinent. It comes from Portugal, from 16th century. And this has been used to categorize professional guilds in Asia, the word caste, by the European colonial powers in the 18th century. It was done by the Portuguese, it was done by the Dutch, the French, as well as by the English, who eventually took over most of the colonial, strategic areas of Asia. And this mirrors what was being done in Europe in the 16th century. So you can see that how it's a legacy of colonialism, because the entire word and the concept behind that word is actually an import from Europe. Caste, the word caste doesn't find any mention in any canonical Hindu scripture. Never. Nor in any other philosophical schools, any Buddhist thoughts, any Jain philosophical schools, or in any within the diversity of the Hindu philosophical schools in, Advaita, Vishishtadvaita, no mention of caste. We strongly condemn this because, when you make some resolution on the basis of something and target a population segment, at least do the research to know where it comes from. So this whole thing actually is based on a false narrative. And the worst part is that these discriminations, even, there are jati and there are varna concepts within the Hindu scriptures, and they do talk about social hierarchies. But this is the most important but here. Those things have been given up in legally by the Hindu society. And within India, if you travel within India, I mean, politics aside, in every society, politics brings up its own discriminations. But it is not legally possible in India to promote discrimination on the basis of caste, just like it is not legally possible to promote slavery in America, even though both the Bible as well as the Quran has the concept of slavery and clearly talks about slavery. But that doesn't mean that you target Christianity and Islam for slavery. Nobody does that in America or Europe. But this is being done with respect to Hindus on the basis of caste, even though the word caste doesn't exist in any Hindu scripture. So this is the concept I think we need to be very clear upon. And as Hindus, we need to be educated to understand this. and that is also one of the reasons why it is important that we talk about it more, because if we don't have our own concepts clear and our own understanding of what we are doing, then somebody else, in this case, Islamist groups, the Equality Lab, and such sundry organizations will take control of the narrative, which is what they are doing right now. And we are really not well equipped to counter it, because we are not educating our own populations about these issues.
That is a point that is really really important to kind of keep in mind, that this is it is not nobody. I mean, so that nobody in their right mind, nobody who is a rational human being, or even a human being, I would say, would come up and say that they stand for discrimination. That discrimination of any kind has no place in any society, not in Hindu society, not in any other society. And we firmly stand as individuals, as organizations, against any kind of discrimination. We all stand for diversity, we all stand for inclusion, we all stand for equal treatment, social justice. In fact, I think that social justice is baked in to the Hindu ethos. uh, and
And not just that, I mean, since these people are targeting people of Indian origin, they need to understand that social justice is baked into very strongly within the Indian constitutional framework. I
correct.
mean, the way Indian constitution, in fact, the writer of the Indian constitution is the person who created this concept of social justice in the Indian subcontinent. He wrote the so it's such an ironic way of targeting the Hindu
And,
community.
and, and look, I mean, the universal franchise right to vote was granted in India right at the inception of India's independence. So this is the kind of social justice, the fact that Dr. Ambedkar was actually considered the father of the Indian Constitution, one of the primary authors, many people involved, but the primary author of the Indian Constitution, uh, and the concept of social justice built into Indian Constitution, and without any substantial opposition. Even before that, I mean, I think if you look at the history of independence movement in India, a lot of the upliftment of people who were downtrodden, people who were traditionally discriminated, were economically impoverished. All of this was, were integral part of India's freedom movement. Indian freedom fighters did not say that we'll talk about social justice after the independence. If you look at Gandhiji and the way the ashrams were set up by Gandhiji, if you look at what Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and his Indian National Army, all of these places, on all of these
Not
leaders.
just, but even RSS. Gandhi has
uh,
actually been on record praising the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, which, by the way, these very organizations that are bringing up this pseudo caste resolutions in America consider RSS as a fascist Nazi organization. They
I,
don't leave any word. Uh,
I,
Gandhi went on record about
I
how.
don't know if you know this, but I do have a slide on that, and I was going to, now that you brought it up, I'll pull that slide forward and then talk about the other issues in a minute, about the Santa Clara resolution and the Cal State resolution. But since you brought up RSS, I was going to talk about it, but let me just talk about it up front. So the I do you recognize the two people on this slide?
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right. So that I am a person who can never tell, by looking at the people, looking at the last names, what people's caste is. I believe in, just really truly being class agnostic, while being mindful that there are, that anywhere you see injustice, you have to fight. Injustice to anyone is injustice to everyone, and you have to fight it. But the reason I bring this slide up, Utsada, on the left, for people who have not seen this, don't know this, and who don't know about how, and they who have bought into this narrative that RSS and in India, and Hindutva people in general, and we consider ourselves to be Hindutva proudly so, that Hindutva people are casteist and they stand for upper caste and all this narrative. On the left is the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, and on the right is the President of India, Ramnath
Ramnath
Kovind,
Kovind. Yes.
right? So I had to actually read the papers to figure out what their caste is, because again, we don't pay attention to such things. This is the kind of stuff that, you know people who want to make political living out of can make a case out of. So that now that we know about it, tell us what is the caste of these two.
So the first thing is, I think before we showed this slide and this, we should have actually shown the amount of hatred that these organizations like Equality Labs and all these, Islamist fund supported narrative builders who go around doing this quote unquote caste resolutions, they spread so much venom and hatred against RSS and against Prime Minister Modi of India, uh, calling them Nazis, casteist, and whatnot. What needs to be known, and this is for those Americans who fall for this trap, and also for those Indian Americans and Hindus who fall for this trap, because there are, I can, there are hundreds and thousands of Hindus who are just plain ignorant and are good. Some of them are well-meaning people who don't know these things. So the person on the left is the Prime Minister of India, and he comes from a backward class community, quote unquote caste community, as the Europeans describe them. He's the Prime Minister of India, the supposed Nazi, fascist, what blah blah.
And he belongs to other backward
you
class.
read New York Times, you will understand it. Washington Post, New York, all spreading this. I don't want to use bad words, but he's the Prime Minister of India, one of the most hated by the leftists,
and probably the most powerful politician in India, right?
Probably one of the top 5 powerful politicians in the entire world. And the most popular political leader in the entire world, because he won by the number of votes that he won with, makes him really the most popular leader in the entire world.
That's right.
He is from a backward caste, by the way, even though he doesn't talk about it, and we shouldn't have been talking about it.
And we shouldn't have been talking. Really,
this is our failure.
It really makes me feel bad that we have to actually talk about it, because
this is the outcome. This is the victory of these fake caste narrative builders, because now we are forced to talk about the Prime Minister of India's caste.
Making people recognize the caste of the people who have risen above it. And again, there is no caste. The word caste is foreign. We should have been talking about Varna and Jati and other things which already done. But to talk about the Prime Minister of India who has risen through all of this and above all of this, rather, and we are now talking about this. So this,
and he's the one who's been called the casteist here, by the way, by these Islamist proxies.
And tell us about the person on the right, the President of India.
The person on the right is the President of India, and he's Ramnath Kovind, and he belongs to what the Western media calls the Dalit community of India. So look at this. A country which has more than 6 years of RSS managed Hindutva rule is led constitutionally and politically by 2 leaders, one of whom is the most politically powerful leader in the Indian subcontinent, both of whom come from the lowest categories of India's so-called caste system.
And they both rose through the hierarchy in RSS.
Both rose through the hierarchies and got the positions they got. And that is why, despite, so this is something that every time we get targeted, but, let me take a step back, Ajay bhai. This is also the reason why we have already lost the narrative to some extent. The fact that we are forced to talk about this because of the attacks coming from the Islamist proxies already proves that we have become, they have managed to divide us, because now we are forced to talk about our people's caste.
But isn't this really the point, that if Tanimoi Soundararajan was really interested in upliftment of all people, she would be taking pride in the rise of Prime Minister Modi and President Kovind, and she would be saying she would be telling the world that, look, the progress is being made. Let us join everyone and participate in this progress, and bring about the continue working on the social equality, social justice, upliftment of everyone, from every aspect. But the fact that she is going around and propagating the caste theory should imply that there is some other bigger agenda that she has, and that other bigger agenda that she has comes from people who really don't want to see Hindus making this kind of progress that is indicated in this slide with Prime Minister Modi and President Kovind. So then we start analyzing that and saying that who are the people, who are the forces that want to bring up this narrative? And that is what our belief is. And obviously we have not done deep research into it, but the obvious thing is that when Tanimoi goes around and finds a Pakistani to lead a resolution or to constitute a committee, HR committee, Human Rights Committee, within the Human Rights Commission of Santa Clara or within the Cal State University, it means that there are bigger forces. And those are the forces that have always tried to either convert Hindus by force, fraud, or inducements. And I think she is just a tool. Equality Labs and
So I
Kanimori
want to
are
say
just the
something more, Ajay bhai.
tools
I want to
that
say something more. We, you know, it is extremely difficult to track economic transactions. So, therefore, the accusations we are making are going to be
absolutely.
in
We are
terms
not
of
going to talk about
in
where
terms
they
of
get
visible
funding, any of that.
yeah, in
Yeah,
terms of visible patterns of social
absolutely.
interactions, and
Yep,
and people have to make their own conclusions out of it. And I'm pretty sure people are smart enough to do that. So
yep,
what needs to be noticed is that this entire Equality Labs project that Tenmori runs, Tenmori runs it, and there has been a change in the support system that has propped this movement up. It
yep,
started off with church support from the Church of South India, which is a Protestant evangelist church that is based out of United States and is extremely heavily involved in conversion activities in India.
yep,
That's where her initial support came in the first couple of years of her movement. Then it slowly moved into support from the extreme left-leaning organizations,
yeah,
which have been kind of the bridge between the Islamists and the Christian right-wing groups. Because in American political space, the Christian right-wing and the Islamists actually don't talk to each other; they hate each other. But when it comes to targeting Hindus, they somehow come together, and that coming together process happens under the larger umbrella of the extreme left group. So you can see
these are the breaking India forces, right?
these are the, as Raji Malhotra
As
aptly
Rajiv
puts
Malhotra
them.
would say, these are the
Yeah,
breaking
with
India
due credits to
forces.
Raji Malhotra. And it is really interesting how much of an interest they have, because they don't like each other. None of them like each other. The
Yeah, none
extreme
of them
left
like
doesn't
each
like
other.
each other. The Christian right, they are at each other's throat within American political space.
Yeah,
But come the Hindu stands in front of them, and they are all together trying to
absolutely.
take every every bit of flesh out of the Hindus' bones. So
Yeah, no, no,
that,
really. I
that's where
mean,
the
this is
Tenmozi Kanarajan and Soundarajan project and Equality Lab project comes from. And now it is completely in the good graces of the Islamists, especially after India removed Article 370 from Jammu and Kashmir. Since then, there has been a general trend of this movement being supported and regularly prompted up within America's political space by people who have either a Pakistani connection
and
or an Islamist
the most
connection.
interesting part is that in we don't want to go to today, but in the previous constitution of Jammu and Kashmir, when the Article 370 was in place, was probably the most discriminatory towards Dalits in anywhere. There are
Exactly.
certain kinds of jobs that were designated for them, and
No, no,
it's like,
they, they,
and
they
it was the
basically
most
gave Dalits,
homophobic.
they basically get the Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir, which the Islamists support and which Tenmori never spoke against,
Yeah,
because obviously she her fundings or whatever is behind
but
it.
that's not say funding, but her
Yeah,
ideological leanings.
yeah, her entire support structure will stop supporting her. She never spoke about the fact that when Article 370 existed in the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir, the biggest target of that article were the so-called Dalits within the Hindu society and the women.
Absolutely.
And not one organization in America which speaks for all these, anti-Hindu, anti-India causes spoke about it. But now that article was removed, and Indian government fully integrated Jammu and Kashmir into India and applied the Indian constitution there,
Yeah.
thus helping the so-called Dalits and the women population of the state. These people have been fund. I won't use the word funded because I cannot show bank transactions, but they have been supported and prompted by Islamists who use the banner of caste to target us as
So that
Hindus.
let's go to some of the. So we had a response to that, right? So we had a response to this resolution that I showed earlier. The resolution talked about, as you can see, they want caste as a protected class, which makes the legal process of suing someone under discrimination on the basis of caste easier. And they're saying the Equality Lab to establish caste as a protected category, not caste system to be protected category. So they're saying that you can individuals uh, and companies can now be held accountable for this so-called caste discrimination. Here is the response that we sent out as Hindu Pact and as VHPA, World Hindu Council of America. And we said that the word caste is of Portuguese origin, to your point. Then we said that there is no reference to concept of caste in any of the Hindu canonical scriptures, nor in any other religious or philosophical school that originated in the Indian subcontinent. And then we made a point that, look, I mean, we are absolutely against any kind of discrimination anywhere, right? um, and unlike other faiths where there is a religious sanction on slavery. So and so that we don't have to go too far into the history to look at that, right? Because when these when the extremist militant ISIS took over territories in Syria, they enslaved Yazidis, and they said that that's just spoils of their victory. So, I mean, we don't want to go into too much details of that, but there are recent examples, and they justified their religious scriptures to make that point. But let's go past it. The good news here is that there are existing laws. If there is any kind of discrimination, either racial, either religious, ethnic, any kind of based on national origin, ancestry, all of it is really illegal in the state of California. And because it's illegal in the state of California, existing laws should be more than sufficient to take care of any other discrimination that comes along. And this kind of a resolution, if it comes about, or this kind of proposal, will only seek to divide the Hindu community. So the take it from here to this second part of the statement.
It will not only seek to divide the Hindu community, but it will also lead to the othering of the Hindu community. So basically now, it is what was done to the Jews in Germany in 1930s. Basically, you're going to create othering, an element of Hindus being somebody else, and within Hindus, somebody is being somebody else, and therefore that person needs to be hated. And it's going to be a slippery slope of hatred that will only lead to hate crimes. And Hindus are already very familiar with the hate crimes that happen against them, not just in terms of the physical violence that happens so often. I mean, Hindus are thrown in front of a train in New York subways because they look different, and they are different. But not only that, it will also lead to micro hate, which is everyday bullying in public spaces. Hindus face that too. Hindus are often and regularly told that they are going to hell for not being for being who they are. So it is, if this is allowed and this is promoted under this false narrative of caste, we have to get ready for similar increase in hate crimes against the Hindu community, and that's going to be very unfortunate for us.
Yeah. And then the last part of our statement was that uh, this overriding intent of this legislation is clearly to divide the Hindu community in Santa Clara County and America and California and all over America, which has lived in harmony for decades, despite the political machinations by those who misunderstand or hate Hindus and seek to divide Americans rather than unify them. And what is being presented as caste in Santa Clara is routinely practiced by Muslim and Christian communities in the Indian subcontinent.
Not just that, at least the so-called caste discrimination that exists, or that used to exist ever. First of all, again, we are using the wrong word. If there is any discrimination, that at least in depth, Hindus all were going to the same crematorium. If you go to the Indian subcontinent and other parts of Asia, the Christians don't even allow the burial of somebody from a so-called actual different caste, because it's a European concept that came into the Christians when they converted to Christianity. They don't even allow burial in the same grave, and same with the Islamic community. So in death also there is discrimination within these communities, and these are never addressed in America or anywhere else in the world.
So that the postscript to this is that the meeting that was going to take place did not happen on April 9th, I believe, as it was expected. but it is on the agenda for future. So we will continue to work with all the other Hindu organizations and the Hindu community at large, and make sure that the facts are presented before the Human Rights Commission and the Santa Clara County supervisors. So that this movement actually started a little earlier. It was the first test case that they had was actually a Brandeis University, and this Brandeis University uh, was the first one to kind of make a statement that caste will be a protected, protected class, and that was based on a survey, uh, a so-called survey, because it's really not a real survey, but a so-called survey by a group that we've been talking about, Equality Lab. So I am going to put up this survey for all our viewers to take a look at, and then have you comment on this so-called survey. Now, I can tell you, so that in no study of of science that I have done, um, this can be considered a survey. Okay. Uh, I think if I were to use that in my thesis, I would have been laughed out of the university, or worse yet, I would have, well, let's just leave it at that. So let me share this. I'm sorry, I shared the wrong file. Um, let me. I have multiple files open, so I want to. This is the file I wanted to share. Take a look at this, Utsada. So this is the caste survey. Okay, so as the South Asian American community, we are uniquely situated, whatever. And then it says that when we talk about this, now this is not a scientific survey. Okay, everyone should know this. This is not a scientific survey of South Asian community or Indian subcontinent community. By the way, as I have said in every single show, South Asian community, South Asian is meant to erase word South Asian, phrase South Indian, South Asian. South Asian is meant to erase the Hindu identity, because it's a bracketing of the worst kind. It's bracketing South Asians, it's bracketing Hindus with Indians and Indians with South Asians, where it seeks to erase Hindu identity. Now, getting past that, here is the a survey that is really not a survey. Okay, if you go down and if you really read this, it talks about caste and everything else, but then it talks about survey, and it says that this survey is a community survey. What is community survey? What they did was set up a survey form on some internet website and had their friends fill out the survey. They analyze the result and say, look, everyone who is Dalit in America is getting discriminated against. And now they take this, they go to the mainstream media like CNN, like PBS, like New York Times, and NPR, and that they have these friends of theirs either write on it or talk about it. Then they go to a university where they have certain leverage on the left, and from the left political wing, and they say, look, can you because look, now it is all in the mainstream media, can you put it on our can you now put caste as a protected class? And they got this done at Brandeis University for the first time. Okay, and and now they're using the Brandeis University uh, you know resolution, or Brandeis University determination that caste is a protected class, and they're using it in Cal State system. Let us take a look at their survey. Um, so this is the survey, okay, and basically it's a multi-year effort. It's a multi-year effort, and based on this survey, they even got some prominent people, including some academicians, to sign off and say, yes, there is caste discrimination in America. But it's all based on this fake survey or survey of people with vested interest.
So let me tell you something more. The people who have signed on to this, they were on the side of this agenda even before the survey was done. Somebody like Cornel West was already on the side of this equality labs, quote unquote equality labs, before the survey was done. And funny enough, Cornel West is also on the side of the Maoists in India. He has made statements in support of the Maoists in India. So you can see, there's a pattern again that starts fitting into this game. I gave the example of Cornel West because I did see him do these things before even this survey existed. So yeah, so you can see that some of them were not even interested in the survey. They were already running the agenda before the survey was done. They just added their name because they're academicians.
That's right. So this is the I and for people who are interested, they should take a look at this survey, because um, there is really, without any scientific basis, it makes statements such as, I clearly remember my classmates who were upper caste openly asking me my caste and then feeling proud and saying, I can't even think of dating you because you are from a lower caste. Now anyone can go to any website and write this. There's no name, there's no reference, there's no way to check if this is true, that is not true. Again, look, nobody nobody is for discrimination of any kind, but to make up a non-scientific survey, they themselves, equality lab admits that this is not a scientific survey, this is a community survey, whatever that means. Never heard that word in science. But a community survey, open to all, website, just put whatever you want survey, taking that as a basis for passing legislations. That is what, and that is what is concerning with Soda, because there are vested interests that are anti-Hindu. And I keep saying this, they're buying into this, and the second generation, they're going with this to the third generation Hindus, who do not have this context, the larger context of why this is being done, and telling these second and third generation Hindus that there is something inherently wrong with Hindu dharma, and the only way to free yourself is to abandon Hindu dharma. That is really the goal here. The goal
That
is
is
not
that is the
equality.
goal here.
The
That
goal is
that
not social justice.
that is
Goal
the
is
goal
for
here.
Hindu kid to abandon Hindu identity.
That is the
That
goal.
is where this survey is leading.
Even worse. The goal is to make sure that this becomes such an overarching identity definer that instead of calling ourselves Hindus, uh, future generation of American Hindus will just identify themselves with a so-called caste that these people are so aggressively enforcing. And that is basically their agenda. And when those two things happen, then you start losing identity as a Hindu, and second, you start bringing identity as a caste. They would have succeeded in bringing up all the fault lines that they could exploit, and the next logical step will be to convert them to another. Whoever is going to be having the upper hand in this, pouring more support into this agenda, will get the upper hand and then try to convert these people. I believe it will be both Islamists and right-wing Christians fighting with each other after that. Who gets to convert the Hindus most? Because they
Yeah.
eventually are both the same thing, just a different book.
Yeah. Hey, so I want to take a second to read some of the comments that are coming on the chat.
Okay.
Dhavalbhai, thank you very much. Dhavalbhai is saying that you're providing us with better understanding on subjects you select. Great service. Keep it up. So thank you, Dhavalbhai, for your encouraging and kind words. We really, truly appreciate it. Vandana Sharma ji is saying that excellent points. Bravo. Thank you, Vandana ji. Ankush Bhandari ji is saying, well said. This narrative is being spread from the 1800s by the West, and then he's saying that now, Chandan Bandyopadhyay is applauding us, and Ankush ji is then saying that we see that there what three things that they have done in last 2 weeks: report by U.S. human rights comments on Indian democracy, U.S. Navy entering the Indian waters, and yesterday um, there was some talk in some media about India-Pakistan war in the next 5 years. So join the dots, and it will tell you how they are afraid of India's rise. So he's relating the attack on and certainly there's a that's a good point, that this narrative is taking hold because India is on rise, and I would say because also Hindus are now occupying some of the most prominent positions, or people of Hindu ancestry, at least, are occupying some of the most prominent positions in America. And I think that is so I think this is one way, because other ways have not worked. So this is one way of bringing them down. Um, and again, Ankushji is saying, "What is this survey anyway?" So yeah, we agree with you, Ankushji. What is this survey anyway? I don't think anyone can really talk and say what is this survey. It's such a made up thing. Um, but but this is where we are in America today. uh, Utsada, we talked a little bit about Brandeis University, and I want to talk also about the other. So now we said that this is the effort that is now taking place in other universities also. So I want to give you a couple of examples of what is happening in one of the in one of the board meetings of the student, the student government basically um, took the resolutions that were passed in various Cal State universities. So, for those who are not from California and who want to know about the Cal State, the California's educational higher education system, it is a 4-tier system. The first tier is the high-end research universities, and they are the UC systems. There are 10 of them, like UC Berkeley, UC San Diego, UCLA, UC Irvine, etc. The second tier is the Cal State University. They do grant some PhDs, but they're not considered to be very high-end research universities. The third is the Cal Poly. There are only two of them, I believe, two or three of them, and that they are very specialized universities, technology universities. And the fourth is the community college system. So the most of the, if you look at the number of students, Cal State universities have the most number of students. They're the most prevalent in terms of the admissions and the number of students as such, because they are not as selective. They are selective, but they're not as selective as the UC system. And they're spread all across California. They're in, like, say for example, Cal State. There's one in San Diego. There's one in San Marcos, which is not that far apart. They're 30-40 miles away, and there are one each, right? And then there is in Bay Area there are several Cal States, and so all across California. And so, because it has such a large student population, this kind of resolution becomes important, because then they have this overarching student body that has representatives from all Cal State universities. So this is the resolution that was passed by associated students of Sacramento State. So Cal State University Sacramento, also referred to as Sacramento State University. And here's the highlighted part: resolution calling for CSU, California State University System, to include caste in anti-discriminatory policy. Similar to the resolution in support of SWANA students, this was originally a discussion item, but was turned into an action item. This resolution advocates that caste should be added to CSU anti-discrimination policy as a way to protect students who face caste-based discrimination. I voted to support this resolution, and it was passed by System-Wide Affairs Committee and will now be discussed by CSSA Board of Directors in April. Utsada, this was discussed yesterday and it was passed 30-0. Okay. I think there was one abstention, but it was unanimously passed by most people who probably have no clue about what is caste. So I don't know if you see the screen, but you probably don't. So let me share the screen again with you. Um, please take a look at this resolution. This is what got passed yesterday unanimously without any dissenting vote. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it is basically a creeping agenda. So what they're going to use other political narratives and try to creep this in and institutionalize it, and then use that as the examples or the precedents to do further creep it in and take it up the ladder. So I think this is also a trend that is in California. This is happening more because of three reasons. Number one, there is a convergence of anti-Hindu and anti-India forces there. You have the Khalistani Sikh groups, you have Islamists, you have the extreme left, and you have special interest groups like Tenmori Sundarajan, who are front groups, whose agenda is to basically do the work and push these narratives. You have all these entities very strong and powerful in California, and also on top of that you have a huge Hindu American population there, which is by and large politically very, very aloof, doesn't do much, tries to make a living and get a green card eventually once they get old. So they're even politically even powerless, because many of them are just waiting for decades for their green cards. So this combination of factors makes the Hindu community in California especially a big target of this kind of creeping Hindu-phobia. And it's going to be done using the quote unquote caste, because that's you're almost using something that nobody can fight against. You're going to pretend like it's against discrimination, even though, as we described, it has Indian constitution doesn't even allow discrimination on the basis of caste. There is such a strong affirmative action.
So that I have a question for you. I don't mean to interrupt, but I have to ask this.
Mm-hmm.
With all the prominent presence of Hindus in America, in California, you can't get a single vote.
So that tells us,
is that too much to ask? One vote?
That tells us something, that the Hindu community in California and for that matter in America in general, including groups like ourselves, have a lot of work cut out for them. And they need to organize, they need to communicate. I underline the word communicate, because there are organizations in other parts of America that can come to the rescue. When I'm using the word rescue also very carefully, because apparently whoever was leading the effort in this particular situation wasn't successful, so they needed help.
Look, I mean, I as two of us as representatives of Hindu Pact, when I ask that question, it's somewhat is somewhat a sign of self-reflection. That means we as Hindu Pact who and have failed. I mean, there's no other way to put it. We have to analyze, we have to be self-critical, and we have to, before we say Hindus, when we say Hindus in California failed, I start with us.
We also
as Hindu Pact
absolutely
have failed first before we say anyone else has failed. Absolutely. So this is really meant as more as a self-awareness, self-criticism, self-analysis, that we have not done our job right. When I say job, we are all volunteers, I understand that, but still, if we consider ourselves to be Hindu advocates, we really, as Hindu advocates, we failed miserably. And we did not fail in California. I talked about the Brandeis as the first step was Brandeis 2 years ago. This is the Brandeis statement, very elaborate, lays out the entire position in black and white in a printed document. And they talk about, the Civil Rights Division's interpretation of Title VI of Civil Rights Act. And they go into all the details as to why they're including caste as a protected class. Utsada, if this was in 2018, okay, this was the early warning sign. We, as the most prominent Hindu organization in America, did not do anything about it. We talked about it a little bit, but after that, when it really came to advocacy and taking the bull by the horn, we failed.
So Ajay, I think there are a couple of things involved here. I mean, there has to be fully admitting that we have much more to do in this aspect, and we are literally up against a field of opponents who are outclassing us in terms of the resources they put into this, in terms of the hours and the manpower they put into this, as well as the aggressiveness of their agenda. You got to be thinking about how somebody literally sits all day and looks around, finding city councils where there is one Pakistani who is going to propose this. So this is the level of research and effort and aggressiveness that is being targeted against us. And in return, I think what is lacking from us, I myself included, is that we are fighting firefighting. And once somebody is targeting us, we try to educate the people, we try to share information with them, we are basically firefighting against something that with our hands tied and walls backs against the wall. And occasionally we succeed. I won't say we haven't succeeded ever. Occasionally we succeed, but more often than not, when our entire predicament is based on firefighting, we are much more likely to fail, which is what is happening more often than not.
Yeah. Hey, Sudha, I want to quickly pivot now to the as we come towards the end of our show today. I want to announce that next week is our 50th, as I mentioned earlier, is our 50th show. And as part of our 50th show, I want to announce a special show that is coming up next week. And here is the special show. We could not have a better topic. So, the next week, Hindu Lounge 50, we are going to celebrate Ambedkar Jayanti as Omnitude Day, Ekatmata Divas, where all of us, we want to emphasize the contributions that Dr. Ambedkar has made in bringing about the equality, the social justice among all in India, and his contributions to the history so of India, and not just India, but the impact that he has had across the world. So we will have special guests, a special episode, and we will be celebrating Ambedkar Jayanti, which actually falls on 14th of April, but we will be celebrating it as Omnitude Day on or Ekatmata Divas on next Sunday at 11 o'clock as a special Hindu Lounge show commemorating the 50th episode. Any thoughts on that, Utsada, before we move to the next topic?
I think there is, there is, it is important that our own Hindu communities from the Indian subcontinent appreciate and understand the role of Ambedkar in addressing some of the issues that were an outcome of hundreds of years of colonial subjugation. And it is important that we communicate that in America to people who are not aware of how we are, what we are facing in this episode, what we are discussing about what we are facing in this episode will be relevant even more once we do the next episode. And it's important for our communities to really do outreach effort and educate people. I keep saying this all the time. It's all about education. It's all about sharing information. We are up against a wall. We have our hands tied behind our backs. We don't have a New York Times and Washington Post, as much as even giving two hoots about what we have to say. But still, that should make us even more stronger in terms of addressing and finding ways to address and educate the larger community out there. It should make us even more determined. When you have institutions against you, it's all about resistance, as many of my friends in the left would say.
Absolutely. Utsada, I am personally looking forward to this. I think that this is going to be the show next week is going to be really eye-opening for a lot of people who have not who have been born and brought up in America, for example, who have not heard about the life and the contributions of Dr. Ambedkar has made to the society in general. I think, and it's going to be educational for everyone. I am eagerly looking forward to the show, and we'll have some very special guests uh, talking about social justice, equality, uh, in general, the varna, jati, caste, all of this. So these are difficult issues, but these are the issues that Hindu community and Indian people from Indian subcontinent will have to face head
And
on.
it
And
must be noted that, when we bring up an individual like Gandhi or Dr. Ambedkar, or for that matter, any historical luminary from Hindu community or from the any other part of the world, we are not saying that everything about that person and everything about that individual is perfect. Nobody says that. This is not. There are nuances about everybody. It's just there are nuances about great American leaders,
there's
about,
historic context.
yeah, and they come from a historical context. But at the same time, we also acknowledge their contributions and their roles in making changes and
Yeah,
bringing positivity in many
absolutely.
people's lives. So this is not a hagiography of in any way. I mean, I'm not a strong supporter of hagiography of any individual, but at the same time, it's important to have to understand and admire their context and their contributions.
Also, with that, the Hindu good news of the week.
So, do you want me to talk about it, Ajay?
I Let me bring up the slide. I can hardly wait so that this is something I was very disappointed when this news item first came. This is the good news of the week. So as you know, Sudha, in India, a lot of the mandirs are controlled by state government in south, but Uttarakhand, a state in the northern part of India, decided that they were going to take charge of 51 temples, and a lot of oppositions. It is a Bharatiya Janata Party government, supposedly a Hindutva government, right? And they wanted to control the temples, and all the Hindu organizations were very disappointed. And this was reversed. Please talk about it.
Well, the thing is that, and this is, there are a couple of things we need to understand in the larger global perspective. India is the only safe space for the Hindu community, majority of the Hindu community in the world. It's the only place where Hindus can find safety. And Nepal, of course, is there, but Nepal has gone through a lot, and when it comes to its own Hindu history. So keep that in mind. And 90% of the world's Hindu community lives in India. I would say 80 to 90%. So keep that in mind too. And then consider the fact that 3,000, 4,000 years of history, recorded history, uh, and the recorded history comes with its own monuments, its own temples, its living temples where there is puja going on, there is sacraments being practiced. Not having control of any of that. Think about 1.5 billion Hindus in the world living in a space which is the only safe space for them, practicing a religion that has a history of 4,000 years recorded, living temples with puja and sacraments and rituals going on, and not having control of it. And then look at this news. So you will, most of our audiences will understand the gravity of what this means. More importantly, it will give them a global perspective of where they should be 50 years from now. I would say, and I would go out on a limb because I don't consider myself limited to somebody who thinks just about the Indian subcontinent. I would say we should have Hindu temples around the world being controlled by Hindus, around Asia, all historical Hindu temples, from Angkor Wat all the way to Azerbaijan in Baku, where you have the Atishkas, the Hindu temple of fire, controlled by the Hindu community. That should be our goal. We should be administering our own temples. That's our history. We should have the control of it.
But we want to definitely say that this is something that happened this week, and so that I cannot be happier that at least And there's a movement. I mean, at least in one state, we were able to stop this, and I'm really looking forward to it being stopped in every state, because this is not something that Hindus after a thousand years of foreign rule. Um, if Hindus cannot control their own temples, what is the freedom for? You and not only that, I mean, you take the money from Hindu mandirs and you give it to people have donated, out of goodwill. People have donated out of their own shraddha, which is their own faith, to a temple for that temple's priest or for the upkeepment of temple and all of that. And you take that money and you give it out and you dole it out to other religions, or to for the purposes that it was not donated for. There cannot be a bigger travesty than that.
And those are also the very same religions that are spending millions of dollars trying to convert Hindus to their religion in
Exactly.
India.
But so that
That's the
today we
irony of the whole
celebrate. Today we will do a separate show about the freeing of Hindu mandirs. But today we celebrate. Right. So with that celebration done, let's go to the next item on our regularly scheduled list. And I will start with Sudha with I'll share my screen and then let you comment on this. So this is the Hindu Seva Charity Act of the Week.
मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं वचसा सततं वदनीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं वचसा सततं वदनीयं लोकहितं मम करणीयं लोकहितं मम करणीयम्
Sudha,
So,
Seva
so,
Charity Act of the Week.
so
Go for it.
I really would congratulate Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America, the World Hindu Council of America, VHPA, for
Our parent organization.
our parent organization, for taking this effort, making this effort. In fact, my wife, after she saw this, she sent it to Children's Bureau for the Illinois state, so that older parents who support foster care kids can send this message around, and if needed can get their vaccines. So kudos to Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America for doing the COVID-19 vaccine camp. I haven't checked, so I don't know, but I hope that it's also on the VHP America website, so that people can go and register, especially in Chicago area. People should be sharing this. I shared it with my wife, as well as to people at Children's Bureau in the state of Illinois. But this is a fantastic effort. This is what makes World Hindu Council of America and organizations like this unique in many ways.
And Chicago has been
it's
a
good for the
trendsetter,
entire
right?
community. And I think this is fantastic.
No, and
So
Chicago
great
has been
work.
a trendsetter. We should admire the Chicago chapter of World Hindu Council of America. They did the World Hindu Congress in 2018. They were the first to have the Hindu Center on behalf of VHPA in Chicago area, which is where this event is taking place, 200 New Bond Street in Sugar Grove, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. We also want to recognize the fact that 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, we did a special show on Chicago Hindus beating back the resolution, the Hindu-phobic resolution against the CAA, or Constitutional Amendment Act in India, and now they are doing the Seva activity. So Nirav Bhai Patel, who is the president of the Chicago chapter, Amitabh Mittal is the general secretary of VHPA, Sanjay Bhai Shah, who is very active over there, and I don't want to leave out anyone, but the whole team, the entire team in Chicago deserves a lot of credit. And if I when I say three names, and I don't mean to neglect anyone else, please send me the names, and next week I will read all of the names who are part of people who contributed to this, and we will definitely can use a report out on this. So that with that, I think let us, with all the compliments, please, if you're in Chicago area, if you need to get the COVID-19 vaccine, please go to the VHPA vaccine camp happening in Chicago next week. With that, Utsada, we go to our last but the most anticipated segment of the show. And before I go there, as is customary, we do have to have some music, right? Is that the right one?
I'm good with it.
Or you want the other one?
I prefer the first one more.
You prefer the first one? Okay. How about this one? So that I don't want to make a joke of this, but I think that this is something that we need to be mindful of. This is what is happening in the Indian subcontinent. And here is a journalist. This is about 2 weeks ago. Ajay Kumar Lalwani, who exposed the Islamic clerics and raised his voice against the atrocity on the Hindu community in Pakistan. 31 years old, he was getting a haircut and he was gunned down. Okay. We get lectures from Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, on how Pakistan is a beacon of freedom and how he is creating a Riyasat-e-Madina in Pakistan. And look at India, which is, paraphrasing him, not exactly his word, but basically a hellhole for all the minorities. Here in Pakistan, where Hindu girls get abducted every day and get converted, where a journalist gets gunned down in broad daylight, where Hindu mandirs get destroyed every week. I mean, is this, what do you say to that? If the Pakistan, I would say that people who gunned Ajay Kumar Lalwani down and people like Imran Khan, who are their promoters, who are their supporters, who are their, who give them the cover, they are truly the Hindu phobes this week. Your comments.
So I want to say something about this because this is also has a connection to what we were discussing earlier today. Most people do not realize that 90% of the Hindus who live in Pakistan, they are the native of the land. They have been there for thousands of years. 90% of them are from the so-called Dalit community, which, according to the colonial caste narrative, the lowest and the most downtrodden of the Hindu communities. Pakistan, as true to its radical Islamist narrative, makes sure that it differentiates different castes and breaks them so that Hindus can be divided, which is exactly what they're trying to do here in America using Equality Lab. But that doesn't mean that it gives anything to the so-called lower castes in Pakistan. In fact, most of the victims of violence in Pakistan, in the Hindu community, and most of the victims of forced conversion and slavery are also the lowest quote unquote caste of the Hindu community in Pakistan. So it's ironic that when Tenmodi Soundarajan from Equality Labs and her friends in the Pakistani community who are counselors try to pass resolution after resolution against quote unquote caste, not once do they mention the forced slavery, the forced conversion, and occasionally the murder of the so-called lower castes, again in quotes, of Hindus in Pakistan by the Islamists. If this doesn't cause you to understand, if it doesn't help you to understand what these Equality Lab like organizations are doing, then I don't think you will get it anytime. So it's this is an example of how biased and how one-sided the narrative is on this issue.
And so that with that, we come to the end of today's show. Once again, a reminder: the next week's show, we are commemorating the the anniversary of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. So we are, which is on 14th, but we are doing a special 50th anniversary, 50th show of commemorating the Ambedkar Jayanti as the Amtyut Day or Ekatmata Divas for in America. So Ekatmata Divas in America next Sunday with special guests who will talk about the upliftment and the of the downtrodden and the role that Baba Sahib Ambedkar played in writing the Indian Constitution, in bringing the people, in providing the social justice to the people who hail from the communities that were traditionally discriminated against, the jatis that were not treated equally, and the role that he played in providing special provisions in Indian Constitution to bring about the social justice and equality. That contribution we will honor, we learn from it, and hope, and I hope really that everyone who we can reach can join the show next week, 11 o'clock Eastern, once again on Hindu Lounge. This is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact, which is a policy research and advocacy initiative of World Hindu Council of America, VHPA. And with me, I am Ajay Shah. I'm the president of VHPA. With me, as always, is Utsav Chakrabarti. Utsada is the executive director of Hindu Pact. Utsada, uh, before we go, we are going to have, again, the Decibels have created a special tune just for this particular episode of Hindu Lounge. It's amazing, amazing music. We will play that as we exit the show. Any last words before I start the music?
No, I just wanted to, this was very interesting to share with our audience. And next week, I hope more and more people join. I hope people invite people who they think need to know more about this. We do our best to try to educate and as well as get educated ourselves while we are doing this. So, this is a joint effort. We are all in this together, and we hopefully will continue to work together to make a better life for Hindus and better life for all Americans. So thank you, Ajay Bhai. And
with that, on to Decibels and the special music for episode number 49. Here we go.